Falling short. Issues of Uncle J.
Hey babes, greeted Rachel one evening as I answered the phone about 6 months before we would break up. What's crack-a-lacking? I responded in my usual jovial tone. You didn't tell me Esther was your younger sister? Well, I did mention I had 2 younger sisters. Yeah, but I only clocked one of them is Esther when I checked your Facebook page. Well, now you know. Don't tell me you're one of her groupies, I teased. No, but I am a subscriber of her channel. She gives good makeup tips and juicy gossip. Good for her. I didn't know she was so popular. So do you know about the fact that your 2 other sisters are going to give birth on the same day? Actually, I don't, I answered, a little bit embarrassed to admit that. How do you not know that? I told you, I'm not really close to my family. I know you said you weren't close. I didn't know you were estranged. I'm not estranged. I just keep things very simple. Why? Because my family think very little of me as a person and are only interested in devaluing me like they did throughout my childhood and beyond. So you cut them out of your life? No, they have all my contact details. You found them on Facebook, for crying out loud. I just only engage them when they come correct. Sounds a bit much. I don't expect someone like you to understand. Someone like me? Yes, someone like you who grew up in a house where parents and siblings showered you with love and support. My childhood wasn't perfect. No childhood is perfect, but your childhood didn't include an absent father and a mother who literally enjoyed hurting you. So what, you're going to resent your family to the day you die? I don't resent my family. It sure sounds like you do. Look, despite how my family treated me in the past, I've kept a pretty open relationship with them right up to the age of 32. But the thing is, they literally feel they have the right to devalue me any way they can. And it's got to the point that if I don't put boundaries in place, I'm literally enabling them. Episode 1. Family. What is real love? Real love makes people feel comfortable. Real love makes people feel free. Real love makes people feel happy. Real love makes people feel sad. Real love makes people feel guilty. Real love makes people feel angry. Real love speaks with sincere actions. Real love never relies on sincere words. Real love helps people discover who they really are. In truth, real love from a human being can go only so far. Real love isn't self-centered, and with your heart it wouldn't play. Real love would at least make the effort to meet you halfway. Real love is straightforward. Real love will leave you with the truth. Real love will accept you're not perfect. Real love will always keep you in the loop. If you have really loved someone, and all they can do is keep you at bay, then real love should make you walk away. The true concept of a family is a beautiful thing. A man and a woman love each other so much they choose to faithfully share their lives with each other. Then the love and commitment they show each other is poured out on their children, creating a unit where parents and children are driven by love to effectively look out for each other. When you think of the term family in any context, you think of a group of people who love you, care for you, acknowledge you, and are always looking to support you, especially when you can't support yourself. By the time I was born in Hackney, London, England in September 1980, my biological father was nowhere to be found, and it was very apparent my mother wasn't prepared to be a parent, let alone a single one. I had a stepfather who really didn't seem to care about anyone but himself. It was clear my mother was nothing more than a convenient squeeze. I remember being left alone a lot, under the care of hostile babysitters, or being highlighted as a source of frustration, which meant a lot of yelling and sometimes being hit. At the age of around 5, I went on a school trip. I was given no money. I saw other kids buying souvenirs, caused me to come home a little sad, as I felt left out. My mother responded by saying, "You should have told me you needed money." Really? A 5-year-old should have reminded you, the parent, about providing money for a school trip. In the early years, my mother's neglect and abuse hadn't really affected me. It's amazing the huge window of opportunity parents generally have to establish a positive relationship with their kids before any kind of resentment kicks in. I remember, despite being left alone and not really being looked after generally, being fine with my own company, playing with toys under my bed and watching cartoons on my own. I remember climbing on the ledge of the living room window. At the time, we lived on the top floor of a skyrise flat. So it was in the manner of someone trying to attempt suicide, only I was just up there for fun. One of our neighbors saw me, and my sister came into the living room screaming my name, which wasn't too bright of her, considering she could have startled and caused me to fall to my death. But she didn't know better, seeing as she was about 7 years old at the time. Anyway, she didn't startle me. She just got my attention, which caused me to casually climb back in. I remember my mother yelling at me after she was told what I did. But looking back as an adult, I can't help highlighting the fact that she left her 5-year-old alone while she hung out with her friends downstairs. Even though at this time I wasn't really affected by how my mother was failing me, in terms of retaining any bitterness or resentment, I do remember going to school and being aware that my mother didn't love me the way I saw other children's mothers love them. Christmas of 1987, Auntie Femi and her children came to visit. My auntie was a woman that radiated love, and her youngest son, Rotimi, who was the same age as me, was my best friend for that holiday season. In 1988, my mother decided to move me and my older sister to Nigeria, which meant us staying at Auntie Bosse's, my mother's younger sister. As a child, she seemed funny and cool, but years later she was shown to put my older sister through a lot of abuse, which I wasn't able to witness because, on my request, I was allowed to live with my best friend Rotimi. What I thought would be paradise ended up being hell on earth, as I was physically, emotionally, and mentally abused in ways that if I went back in time with all my present knowledge and experience, it would take all I have to come through the experience unscathed. If I wasn't being beaten, I was being excluded from the family, left alone with no one to talk to, no one to guide me, or no one to love me. Rotimi went from my best friend to evil minion of his older brother, Bolaji, who enjoyed torturing me. In fact, the whole family used to torture me physically, mentally, and emotionally on a daily basis. I had no peace as I could be tormented or tortured at any moment for no reason. To recount all that was done to me while I lived with them for 9 years would be impossible. Put it this way, I wouldn't know where to begin. It was that frequent. It would be like trying to recount how many meals you had in a 9-year period. In 1992, I went to the Nigerian boarding school, Federal Government College, Lagos, Ijaniki, which was in itself hard. But for most, the rural lifestyle consumed with bullying from older students and staff was relieved by going to a loving home during the school holidays. I didn't have that relief. And so by 95, I had a public and loud mental breakdown, which was met with confusion and more abuse. To make things even more messed up is that during the holidays I would go and stay with my mother, who would also torture me due to the fact she assumed my uncle was spoiling me because he was wealthy. Plus, she would do this while marginalizing her stepchildren, children of her new husband that she didn't give birth to. The whole scenario was just a mess. I had a lot of hatred and resentment for my family as a whole. And in my head, I couldn't even use Nigeria being a harsh culture as an excuse, as I witnessed Nigerian parents in Nigeria love their children. I remember thinking if I could get back to England, everything would be okay. So at the age of 15 going on 16, I jumped on the chance to move back to England with my mother. And looking back, it was the right decision, as Nigeria didn't suit me in terms of just making my way. It was really the case of being tortured in a third world country or being tortured in a developed country with more opportunities. In 1996, I moved back to England with my mother, who continued the mental, emotional, and where she could, physical abuse. In July that year, my mother out of nowhere began screaming at me for not saying happy birthday to her, which was insane because I didn't know her well enough to even know when her birthday was. On top of that, I couldn't help remember all the birthdays she missed, particularly my 9th birthday when I woke up in my uncle's house and no one remembered or cared. I cried uncontrollably. So much so, even Rotimi felt sorry for me and took a day off from tormenting me. While my mother carried out her onslaught, I would listen to the Boyz II Men track, Mama, and imagine being able to sing that to a mother who was worthy of the song. Somehow I made it to university, which I used as an opportunity to move out in the summer of '99. I didn't have much contact with family after that, but that didn't stop my mother from trying to negatively impact my life by deliberately handing in false information to the authorities to try and stop me from getting my student finance in my final year of university. I remember when I first got to England, my mother was so aware of what she was doing that she would do sick things like take me to the GP and say I was mentally ill to establish a record that would prevent social services coming to my aid. She would then frequently brag about causing me pain, like it brought her immense pleasure. Now that I think about the way she treated me, it is clear that she was ill. Just very, very ill. So much so, she would subject me to all manner of abuse, then inform her siblings, my aunties and uncles, that I was some kind of problem child, just to get attention. Her desire to cause me so much pain was just mind-boggling. I managed to get through university, but I was struggling with the usual challenges of being in the working world, as well as trying to hold my mental health together, which was beyond strained. As an adult, I tried to have a positive relationship with my family, but I found they seemed happy to treat me like a weird loser. But despite everything, I found myself giving into a natural human desire to belong and be part of something, and still try to reach out and create some kind of family network that included my abusers. I wanted to be there for my younger sisters, as one of the worst aspects of my years of abuse is that it turned me into a horrible older brother on numerous occasions, for which I found myself apologizing to my 2 younger sisters when I was about 16, because I wanted to be better. I tried to have a network right up to the age of about 32. Then I realized that the desire to hurt me was still very much alive. As a man, they couldn't beat me up, but they did try to address/refer to me as some kind of second-class citizen. After going through the let me love everyone phase with no real godly wisdom after I gave my life to Christ, I realized I had to obey a word given to me 12 years ago, which was to keep them at a distance by keeping boundaries. I don't hate my family or hold any bitterness towards them. In fact, I've forgiven them and wish nothing but the best for them. However, I view them in the same way I would a pack of ravenous wolves. I don't hate a pack of ravenous wolves, but at the same time, I wouldn't cuddle and hang out with them in their domain, as they are guaranteed to shred me into pieces. When my family choose to interact with me in a sensible way, or when I don't feel vulnerable, I more than welcome them. But other than that, I generally keep my distance. For example, at one point my mom sent me scriptures every day, and in return I welcomed them. If she sent me anything negative, I ignore it or respond with something that would hopefully inspire her to do better. It's a shame I have to keep my family at bay, as I'm unable to be a good uncle to my nephews and nieces, the way I am to other children who aren't related to me. I have to protect myself and my own potential children. My experience with my family has shown me that above all things, love your spouse and love your children in a way that honors God, and give them to Christ Jesus, because at the end of the day, no one will love your children like He will. My anime life, episode 1. Only a few years after the world changed, on a day engulfed in heavy rain, a young African woman dressed in a worn-out servant dress ran barefoot along a muddy path. She was being pursued by a dozen royal officers, determined to catch what they saw only as a runaway slave. The woman slipped and fell to the ground, which sealed her capture. "Cecilia, my dear, why are you being so ungrateful?" asked King Oye, as the woman was thrown at the foot of his throne. The king was a young Caucasian man dressed like a 5-star general who had inherited the power from his late father, who had led an army to conquer all of the known world. The king was young and cruel. However, he was wise enough to ensure that the day-to-day operations of his inherited kingdom was carried out by qualified personnel, giving him enough time to satisfy his sadistic appetites. "I sheltered you from a cruel world, fed you and gave you work, yet you choose to repay me by running off?" stated Oye, while getting off his throne and kneeling down to make eye contact with Cecilia by pushing up her chin with one finger. "You killed him!" cried out Cecilia as she stared at the king with eyes filled with defiance and tears. "Yes, I did. Let me guess, you were in love with him. But here's the thing. You're my property, and anyone who violates what belongs to the king must be executed," replied Oye, then ordering his guards to take her to the dungeons with a simple hand gesture. 2 weeks later, the royal head nurse, a middle-aged Indian woman, approached Oye's throne. "Sire, I'm here to request Cecilia be let out of the dungeons," said the nurse with her head bowed. "And why would I do that?" responded Oye as he signed off some official paperwork without even looking at her. "Because she is 4 weeks pregnant." "Pregnant? How interesting," said Oye, now giving all his attention to the nurse. As requested, Cecilia was released from the dungeon and moved to the best nursing facilities the king had to offer. 8 months later, Cecilia gave birth to a healthy baby boy. "Hello there, Cecilia," greeted Oye as he entered Cecilia's room, while she lovingly watched her baby sleep in his crib. The sound of Oye's voice caused her to face the king, fearing for the safety of her son. "Don't be troubled, my dear. I'm here to give you something you have desired for a while now." "What is that?" asked Cecilia, unsure what to think. "Your freedom. In fact, you can leave right now," replied the king as his guards walked in and threw a bag filled with months of supplies, ideal for one taking on a long journey. Cecilia uneasily picked up the bag and made the move to carry her son, who was fast asleep. "You can leave, but he stays," verbally halting the mother in her steps. Filled with unbridled rage and frustration, Cecilia ran at the king to inflict as much damage as she could with her bare hands, only to be greeted by a dagger to her heart via the king's hands. "Dispose of the body," ordered Oye as he threw his dagger on Cecilia's lifeless body. "And the baby?" asked the head guard. "Hand it over to the serpent doves," then leaving the room with a little sadness in his heart. Falling Short complete series can be found on JOMAJ Studios' YouTube channel. Falling Short is also available in paperback book format or on Kindle. To get your copy, email jomajstudios@gmail.com. That's jomajstudios@gmail.com.